Hi, folks. Welcome back to another bonus episode of Science Fiction Book Club. My name is Abu, and I'm here with... Opsa. We are here to talk about Murderbot, Episode 8, which just dropped today. Of course, spoiler warning, please make sure you've watched up through Episode 8 of the show, and it will be helpful if you have read at least the first two novellas in the series, because we have covered those on the podcast, and we may reference those in today's conversation.
Indeed.
Okay, let's run through a recap of Episode 8, and then we'll share our thoughts on it. So Episode 8 begins with a Sanctuary Moon sequence. I'm already loving it.
Uh-huh.
In this sequence, Navbot basically betrays and murders the crew after some abuse,
Right.
proving that love does conquer all.
Yeah.
From that sequence, we then cut to present day, where the crew has returned to the habitat and are scoping it out to make sure it's not dangerous. They need to get in there to help Garothin, who is in a lot of pain right now. This is where they realize that the Grey Chris crew are in there right now.
Right.
They can see this through the feeds that Murderbot left back in the habitat to keep an eye on things. And the Grey Chris crew actually grabs one of the cameras and is like, hey, we know you're watching us, so here's what we want to do. We want to talk this out with you. No one else has to die, like the Deltfall crew did.
Right.
Meet us here at this rendezvous location. Let's talk it out. Let's make a deal. Obviously a trap. Murderbot's
Very
like,
obviously
this
a
is a trap, y'all. We can't go do this.
You guys can't be serious. They just killed Deltfall.
They just wiped this other company.
Yeah.
We can't trust these people. We can't do this. Hilariously, there's a really funny moment here where the crew is like hyped up after their fight against the evil sec unit last episode. And they're like, yeah, man, we kicked that sec unit's ass. Like, let's go to this rendezvous and do it again.
We got this.
We got this. We're the best.
Right.
And Murderbot has to kind of throw some cold water on that and be like, folks, your chances of survival are like slim to none. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
They do enter the habitat then because Garothin still needs medical attention. They do surgery on his knee because it's infected. And this is where we learn that Garothin doesn't want painkillers. He doesn't want to risk regressing back to his old ways. He used to be an addict. So the solution they come up with is kind of experimental and something that Murderbot saw on a TV show. Murderbot just plugs into Garothin because Garothin is an augmented human, of course. And a couple of interesting things happen, or some really fascinating moments here. First of all, Murderbot is almost overwhelmed with human emotion. Like the human brain almost overwhelms Murderbot's processing.
And it's not orderly. It's totally
it's
kind of
chaotic.
chaotically organized. Yeah.
Yeah. No file structure, no naming scheme for the files. It's honestly, it's me trying to work with my coworkers. I'm like,
no
what
folders.
the fuck are y'all
Everything
doing?
is just in one folder.
It's just all sitting on your desktop. It's crazy. No organization.
Totally.
Obviously, it's his human emotions. Murderbot even sort of becomes overwhelmed at one point, starts repeating one of Garothin's memories. Yeah. Seemingly a memory where Mensa gently rejects his advances, I suppose.
Right.
Then the reverse happens. Garothin enters Murderbot's memories.
He's in.
He's in, folks, in a way that he wasn't able to get in earlier in the season because Murderbot blocked him. And this is where another bombshell reveal happens because Garothin learns that Murderbot killed 57 members of a previous mining expedition.
His clients.
Literal Murderbot.
Yeah.
And this is huge. The crew is suddenly like, we can't trust this bot.
Yeah.
We've already been kind of tap dancing around whether we can. This new information blows it out of the water.
Yeah. And this is where Garothin also reveals that Murderbot refers to itself as Murderbot.
As Murderbot. That was a funny gag. Yeah. Right. That was private.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have said that out loud.
Don't tell them. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, of course, nerve-wracking, right? Put yourself in the crew's shoes.
Yeah.
You'd be like, wait, our robot likes to call itself Murderbot? Like, this is getting scarier and scarier by the minute.
Yeah.
So Murderbot leaves the habitat. The crew's kind of like, get away from us. You know, like they kind of have this like quote unquote breakup moment. While Murderbot is out and about, the crew is freaking out, obviously, but Mensa takes charge in kind of an admirable way. Mensa's like, hey, everyone, shut the fuck up and focus.
Yeah.
What are we doing about Grey Chris?
Right.
How are we surviving on this planet and how are we getting off?
Right.
We need to take care of what is immediately the danger. Murderbot so far is not the immediate danger and really hasn't presented danger to us directly.
Right.
I really liked Mensa taking charge there.
Totally.
Then we cut to a scene where Murderbot is sort of walking out around the habitat, probably doing another perimeter check, and kind of, again, struggling with, do I need to give a shit about these clients?
Yeah.
What if I just let them die? Wouldn't it just be easier for me, for my life, if I just let them die?
Right.
They don't trust me anyway.
Yeah.
Murderbot's kind of struggling internally with that. We then cut back to what I think is a wildly out of place scene in this episode. Really just turned me off. We cut back to Pinley, Arata, and Rati hashing out their throuple contract, basically. It turns out that Pinley doesn't want to be in this, never really wanted to be in this contract in the first place, to be real about it. And it turns out that Rati also wants to end the contract because Rati has fallen in love with Pinley.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And doesn't feel it's fair to Arata that he loves only one member of the throuple and can't share his love equally. And so they end the contract. There's like this sort of gag about like Arata's offended that Rati didn't fall in love with her, I guess.
Right.
And why did he fall in love with Pinley instead?
Right. And Pinley kind of being like, what do you mean?
Obviously, what are you talking about?
You think I'm hot, so why wouldn't
Rati thinks I'm hot too. Other people think I'm hot. So I don't know. That was weird. I found this incredibly weird. Like, are we calling Pinley ugly subtextually here? Like, what are we saying? Why the gag? Why the joke here about like? I mean, Arata. I'm not sure who the actor is that plays Arata, but she is beautiful. She's gorgeous. I'm like, wow, I kind of have a crush on Arata. I get it, but I don't know. The gag didn't work for me because I was like, what are we doing? Are we calling Pinley ugly? What's happening? Right. The whole throuple scene, I was like, I could do without this. And honestly, like, we set this throuple thing up like 7 episodes ago.
Right. And then never talked about it again.
And this is
really.
our payoff?
Yeah.
Like, this is what we're getting out of it?
Right.
You know, it didn't add to the interpersonal relationship between these characters, I think.
Yeah, fair enough.
In a way, in an impactful enough way for it to be a whole gag that runs this whole season. I think the Garathan backstory and the Mensa relationship, that added depth and character.
Right.
And was a meaningful addition to those two characters. These three, I'm still a little skeptical about, outside of being like silly and goofy, I'm not getting much of an emotional attachment to these three yet. Okay, moving on. I've been distracted. The show ends. Basically, Murderbot returns to the habitat and is like, folks, everyone shut the fuck up. I have a plan. I know what we're going to do to handle this great Chris situation.
Yes.
And that's where the episode ends.
Yeah.
What did you think about this one?
Yeah, I have to say, just like the previous episode, we start out with kind of a banger. I mean, I really enjoyed the Sanctuary Moon scene where we get to see Nav 7, who's being... It's kind of unclear what exactly has happened, but for whatever reason, it's been ordered to kill its lover, the former captain. And suddenly the new captain is kind of abusing it and wielding all sorts of coercive power over it, only for it to eventually rebel. And there's a nice little bit of kind of parallel storytelling happening with sort of how Murderbots come to be. And in this case, we don't have the sense that Murderbot is ready to turn, its weapons on the crew. But I will say at the very end, it seemed to decide that it might have license to betray them. I mean, it's kind of left to the viewer to interpret on their own. But Murderbot says that it can write its own story and ending. And you have to kind of wonder, like, how much of that will parallel what happens in Sanctuary Moon, and how much of that is, that it's come up with this plan, which we don't know exactly the details of just yet. But I have to say, I mean, you really kind of have to feel for Murderbot in this episode. It's being grilled by Garathan, who has been against it the whole time. Never gave it, a moment's benefit of doubt. And there's a sad moment when Murderbot has to, it's doing pretty unconvincing job of defending itself against this charge that it killed 57 of its former clients. And has to, at the end, kind of concede that it may, in fact, be defective. And it's honestly, it's a little sad. And, you know, this whole time we've been cheering for Murderbot, but hard to ignore the elephant in the room when there are 57 dead ones, you know?
Yes,
so,
absolutely. That's a great point.
No, I enjoyed this. I thought there was a lot of kind of pathos, throughout this episode.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm curious for folks who are tuning into this show as just TV watchers who maybe haven't read the novellas yet.
Right.
What do you think Murderbot's plan is?
Yeah.
And do you think Murderbot's going to betray this crew? I'm very curious what you think. I think we should avoid saying what happens in the book because I don't want to ruin it for folks. But what happens next is fun. And this episode, I think, did a really good job of actually leaving it unclear which way Murderbot will go.
Totally. I mean, it's been wrestling with these questions at least since the previous episode of, I mean, how much more should I continue to try to protect these humans who are clearly, I mean, they're seeking their own demise, you know, at all turns. They won't take my advice and my counsel and clearly have shit judgment, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I already mentioned my thoughts on the throuple stuff, so I'm going to skip over that, but I actually did want to chat with you about the Garoth and Murderbot experience of them plugging into each other and accessing each other's memories. That was a highlight for me in this episode. I really liked that. On one level, because I think the comedy worked, Murderbot being like, I saw this on a TV show, hopefully it works, and doesn't like fry Garothan's brain.
Yeah, I saw this on House, and I'm pretty sure.
Right.
His differential medicine, you know.
So the comedy of the moment definitely works for me. I think the added depth of Garothan not wanting to use any painkillers and risk a relapse, that worked for me as well, given the added character depth that we have now with Garothan's backstory. I also really liked that Murderbot couldn't just like read Garothan's brain.
Right.
That it was a little confused by the human brain.
It was lost.
That's not how its brain works.
Totally.
In last week's episode, we chatted about how Murderbot is not just a robot and not just a human.
Exactly.
Smashed together.
Yeah.
Murderbot is a construct. It's its own being. It has its own worldview and its own way of thinking. And so for it to plug into a human brain, it can't just be like, yeah, I get it. I know how this works.
Right.
It doesn't know how a human brain works. So I found all of that very interesting. I wonder if that scene landed for you as well.
No, totally. I mean, and for all of the reasons you mentioned there, I have to say also just kind of the visual depiction of it, I found to be pretty great, you know, because
I agree.
You know, with a show like this one where we've talked about it, I mean, there are only so many sets and kind of places that we really get to explore. And when they take these opportunities to kind of, I don't know, it's really fun, honestly, to see what, you know, how does it look to attempt to navigate through the memories of a human being. And I think we typically think of our memory as kind of associative, and it's very freeform. And you smell something and that triggers the memory of a song, and there's all sorts of kind of very confusing connections that are happening there. And to see, you know, to kind of see it depicted on screen, I thought was really effective. And once again, Garothan, you know, despite his delirium, despite undergoing surgery, we have to remember he is also not purely human. I mean, he is an augmented human. And he's got, you know, I think Murderbot refers to him as being, you know, quite, dastardly clever or something kind of along those lines. And, and that's true. I mean, Garothan continues to be one of the few members of this crew who can sort of keep his wits about him and isn't totally falling for this notion that this sec unit that doesn't have a
governor module.
It doesn't have a governor module of any type, can just be thought of as like a friendly ally. I mean, so I thought that was, I thought it was very effective. That there's just kind of this chess match happening between the two of them, and the little bit of humor that's kind of interspersed, throughout that scene as well, with Murderbot kind of repeating, why don't you love me? Why don't you love me? It's like I'm laughing, I'm crying, I'm really kind of enjoying that kind of that portrayal of really the tension between the two of them.
Yeah. Another strong episode. Here, as we round out the season, I think the show has really found its footing.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying these. Totally. And I think this one was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Very excited for the remaining 2 episodes of this season, and kind of sad that it's almost almost wrapped up here.
Yeah, I know. I mean, these are such bite-sized esporepisodes. 22 minutes, 24 minutes. They're so easy to consume. This is a very bingeable show. I will say that.
Totally.
You and I were lucky enough to get early sort of press screeners so that we could pre-record our coverage in these episodes in time to release them. And so we actually had access to the whole season, and we binged. And I do think that is, man, as much as I hate binge culture, this is a show that is actually, I think, best enjoyed binged.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, it is like kind of a whole story, and in the 10 kind of bite-sized episodes, it feels like kind of a bit of, it's almost like a movie that you could kind of sit down for and honestly enjoy in practically one sitting, probably more than one sitting if you're,
we recommend you move around a little bit more than that in your day. But take a weekend, binge this show. And I think that's a great way to enjoy this series. And I think you'll enjoy it more rather than waiting week by week.
Yeah.
Well, we do have to wait week by week to cover the rest of this show. So, folks, we will be back next week to cover the penultimate episode of Murderbot, episode 9.
All and then, of course, red.
That's right. This episode 9 is titled All Systems Red, which is very exciting. That, of course, is the title of the first novella. So until then, folks, we will see you next time. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and chatting about Murderbot.